Alisa Childers has become one of the leading voices on the topic of progressive Christianity and how it's in opposition of that of historic evangelical or biblical or orthodox Christianity. And we're going to watch a video today of her talking about the 8 points of progressive Christianity, and we're going to talk a little bit through it about some of the points and how they do come up against, or do they, biblical Christianity.
Talk about the 8 points of progressive Christianity. You can write these down if you want, or you can just go to progressivechristianity.org. It's a website run by progressive Christians, and this is their 8 points. Now, this is not a creed in the sense that you'd have to affirm it, but it's a summary of the beliefs of progressive Christianity. And in my research, reading the materials and engaging with their materials, I think this is really the bullseye of accurate of what progressive Christians believe in my experience as well. So let's talk through some of these. Number one, progressive Christians believe that following the path and teachings of Jesus can lead...
Okay, believe that following the path and teachings of Jesus can lead to an awareness and an experience of the sacred and oneness and unity of all life. Notice how those are capitalized. That seems interesting.
Lead to an awareness and experience of the sacred and oneness and unity of all life. Now, let's take a moment and think about what's being said here. There's an assumption about reality that's being made that's not being proven. It's just being assumed, and then we want to have an experience of it, right? And that's the oneness and unity of all life. Take note that oneness and unity are expressed in capital letters. Now, this is going to be extremely important for us to understand. This is a concept that's borrowed largely from Eastern thought. It's borrowed from the New Age, and it's the concept of oneness. And that's the idea that all created matter is of the same essence, and even beyond created matter. So in progressive Christianity, one of the views that's very popular is a worldview called panentheism. If you've never heard of panentheism, you...
Is that like the Hunger Games? Panan? Sorry.
may have heard of pantheism. Pantheism is a worldview that would say the universe, or God is the universe is God. And so if you ever saw the movie Avatar, you've seen an artistic portrayal of pantheism, where the divine is sort of soaked into everything, and everything is the divine in pantheism. Panentheism is sort of the cousin of pantheism, where they wouldn't say God is everything, or everything is God, but God is in everything, and everything is in God. And so in panentheism, the idea is that when God created the universe, he incarnated himself into physical matter. So God still created the universe.
God incarnated himself into all physical matter, so God exists in everything. Literally in everything. That's an interesting statement, because I've heard statements like that before in evangelical churches. I don't know if that's a hard one, right? Because it's like, God isn't in this inanimate object, right? It's an object created by man. Okay, most of us with a brain would probably suggest that's true. And yet, God gave us the ability to create, right? We're created in his image. And so if we're created to be like him, right? That's a good thing. So we do God-like type things, sort of. But no, God isn't in everything, I wouldn't say. So this is interesting. Yeah.
But he incarnated himself into it. And very often it's called the first incarnation. Much like God would fill the created matter like a hand fills a glove. So this is why you can look out into trees and nature and all this, and you can see God in all of that. That's where you might have heard people talk about the ideas like, I see Jesus in every person, or I see the divine in you and everywhere.
Well, hang on. If we're created in God's image, I think you can say, with at least somewhat, you can see God in all people because we're created in his image. There are, things within all human beings that are godlike if we're created in his image. That doesn't mean that, God is residing on the inside, like we've invited Christ to be on the inside, okay? But if I can look at my neighbor or my, or someone that an acquaintance or whatever, and see that they're doing something good, something that is godlike in a sense, because they're, if it's good, it comes from God. Well, that's bearing a little bit of the image of God in their lives. So that's an interesting statement. I think she's building a case here, though, and so we'll see where this all goes.
That comes from this idea of panentheism. This is in contrast to the historic understanding of God's nature, which is that God is so near and he's omnipresent, which means he actually can't be contained by physical matter. He's everywhere all at the same time because he's not contained by spiritual matter. But also he's transcendent. He's separate from his creation. Right? He doesn't infuse the trees with his spirit. He doesn't infuse every human being. There's not a divine spark in that sense that's in every person that you just need to dig down and find, and then you found the divine by looking inside yourself, which is kind of what panentheism teaches.
Yeah, you don't find God by just looking deep down inside yourself. That is definitely she's correct there for sure.
I just wanted to take a moment and explain that concept because it really undergirds so much of the progressive Christian theology. Number 2 is similar to number 1. We affirm that the teachings of Jesus provide but one of many ways to experience the sacredness and oneness of life, and that we may draw from diverse sources of wisdom in our...
The teachings of Jesus provide but one of many ways to experience the sacredness and oneness of life, and that we can draw from diverse sources of wisdom. Okay, Jesus said he's the only way to the Father, right? Not one of many ways. Okay, well, let's see where she goes with this.
Spiritual journey. So essentially, we have to understand that progressive Christianity is non-exclusive, meaning they don't believe that Jesus is the only way to God. He's one way to God. But other religious traditions have found their ways to God, and maybe we can learn from them and figure out what they have figured out about God. And we follow Jesus, they follow Krishna or whoever, but we're not going to say that they're not on their way to the same place we are. We're just going through Jesus, but it's not exclusive. Number 3, progressive Christians seek community that is inclusive of all people, including but not limited to conventional Christians and questioning skeptics, believers and agnostics, women and men, those of all sexual orientations and gender identities, those of all classes and...
Okay, stop here for a second. So they seek a community that is inclusive of all people but not limited to. So all of these people. Now, this is a fine line as well because, in our churches, we would say all are welcome. You're all welcome to be part of this community, right? It doesn't matter your sexual orientation, where you come from, your cultural background, even what you believe to that point, you're all welcome to come. But I think a real church will also say, yeah, but even though you're all welcome, we're here to tell you the truth. And we're here to tell you that your sin is going to separate you from God. We're here to tell you that maybe your viewpoint is wrong. The Bible is true. Here's why it's wrong, what you believe. You know what I mean? So I think the differences within progressive Christianity is they all are welcome. It's completely inclusive, but we're never going to tell you that you're wrong, that your beliefs are wrong. Just you keep doing what you're doing, and you're always welcome and loved here. And that is that's not the way that Jesus did things, right? He loved people for sure, but he loved them enough to point out their sin and said, "Go sin no more," right?
Abilities. And so if this seems confusing to you, that a progressive Christian could also be an agnostic or a skeptic, a non-believer, it's very common in progressive Christianity to have people identify as agnostics. Even there's an online progressive church that's co-pastored by a progressive Christian and an atheist. There's a local church in Nashville who just hired a secular humanist to disciple people through the process of deconstruction. Because again, it's not about...
stay away from those churches.
Jesus is not the only way. And if Jesus isn't your way, it's okay. You can still be at church here. You can believe, you do you, we'll do us, and everybody's welcome to kind of express themselves however they would like. Number 4, progressive Christians know that the way we behave toward one another is the fullest expression of what we believe.
Okay, now that's interesting too. Because do we really believe something to be true if we don't act on it, right? And I know sometimes our actions and our beliefs don't always line up because we're sinful, fallen people. But often we will live out what we truly believe, our truest convictions. So interesting.
Now, at first blush, again, we might look at this and say, well, yeah, what we believe is our behavior is gonna be what we believe. It's gonna be based on what we believe. But what we have to understand in progressive Christianity is that what you do is much more important than what you believe. That's why I mentioned you could have one progressive Christian who believes the resurrection, one who doesn't, but as long as they're both, speaking truth to power to tear down systems of oppression together, they're good. They don't have to agree on the resurrection or on doctrinal points and things like that.
Okay.
Number 5, progressive Christians find grace in the search for understanding and believe that there is more value in questioning than in absolute.
More value in questioning than in absolutes. Find grace in the search for understanding. Okay, we want to exhibit grace to those who are searching, who are asking questions, and even expressing their doubts. I think that's a positive thing. But if you find more value in questioning than in absolute truth, I think this is where the problem is going to lie here. Let's see what she says.
So this is a really key, I think, characteristic of progressive Christianity in that it's a perpetual question-asking journey. You don't ask questions because you want to know answers. In fact, in progressive Christianity, if you express certainty on a certain theological point or doctrine, you're kind of viewed like, well, you're just not as enlightened yet. You haven't gotten there yet. If you express something like, I don't know,
Have you seen this?
Figure it out.
I've seen this. I've seen people like this that are kind of down this train. It's just always questioning, always questioning, always questioning. I believe there's answers to many, if not most, of our questions. I mean, there's some questions we're never going to get the answers for on this side of eternity, for sure. But most of the questions we have, I think there are answers in the Bible, in a deeper understanding. So, if you just value perpetual, continual questioning, there might be a problem here.
Then you're sort of praised as being more enlightened. And so it really becomes a culture of doubt, where doubt itself becomes the thing to be celebrated, rather than, hey, let's look at our doubts, let's try to resolve those, let's work through what we can. It's more, they're not asking questions because they want answers. It's just asking the question to try to find the next question. Number 6, progressive Christians strive for peace and justice among all people. I would hope as Christians we would always want to be the ones standing up for real justice and peace, but what we have to understand again in progressive Christianity is that a lot of words get redefined. And so when they say the word justice, they're not talking about biblical justice. They're not talking about the fact that every single one of us deserves death. And, that would be justice, right?
Wow.
They're not talking about each person getting their fair due. They're talking about systems that the culture is talking about. So in progressive Christianity, they've adopted a lot of the language of culture when it comes to justice. So rather than being something where there's, the Lord loves, I think it's in the Proverbs or Psalms, where he doesn't want unequal measures. Like he wants it to be fair and just, right? But in progressive Christianity, justice actually means equal outcome for all people. So any system, anything.
Equity versus equality, right? This is where, not to get too political here, but the far left of the spectrum, on the political spectrum, the far left, the radical left, this is what they're looking for. Not equal opportunity or fairness, but equal outcomes or equity, right? Which, of course, in that lies all kinds of problems where you have people, the high scholars of the far left, which maybe are being adopted in progressive Christianity, saying that discrimination, all right, is good if it helps lead to equality, all right, or equity, equality of outcomes. So if you can discriminate against certain peoples because they're achieving too much success, then that's a good thing. No matter if it's basically, you throw merit out the window, right? Which of course flies in the face of biblical values, right? Where we treat people according to their character and according to merit and according to, just what they're living out in that moment. You can't just treat people like that.
That people might come out at the other side with differences in what they receive or different outcome. That's defined now as unjust. This is not the biblical definition of justice. As we know, heaven's not even going to be that way, right? There's going to be different rewards for different people in heaven. We're not all going to have the same experience in heaven. And so this is just, in fact, you'd actually have to do the opposite of justice, because you'd have to take from somebody who earned something to give it to somebody who didn't, to do that. And frankly, we all know it doesn't work anyway. This has been tried lots and lots of times. It's not a biblical way to approach the topic of justice. So they generally take on the secular definitions of those things. Number 7, progressive Christians strive to protect and restore the integrity of our earth.
Okay, that sounds good too. That sounds good. Of course, like anything, it can be taken to extremes, which I think a lot of people do. I haven't seen it so much in progressive Christians, but certainly the far left of the political spectrum and the environmental activists, maybe some of that is filtering into progressive Christianity.
I hope, again, as Christians, that we strive to take care of the earth God has created for us and made us stewards over. Granted, we haven't always done the best job at that, and we live in a fallen world, and it's tough. But here's the thing, though. In progressive Christianity, this is a core tenet. Remember the view of panentheism. If you believe that the universe is literally the body of God, which it's called in panentheism, then it becomes environmentalism, socioeconomic reform, all of these things become like gospel
That's true.
Topics. They become
Makes
gospel
sense.
issues. And so this is why environmentalism is so important in progressive Christianity. Number 8, progressive Christians commit to a path of lifelong learning, compassion, and selfless love. I hope that we would all be on
Sounds
board
wonderful.
with that one. But once again, we realize in progressive Christianity, so many words are redefined. Love does not mean biblical love. Biblically speaking, according to 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient and kind. We all love that stuff. But then it says a little bit later, love cannot rejoice in wrongdoing. Love rejoices in the truth.
Yeah.
So biblically speaking, to love someone means you can't rejoice if they're doing something harmful or that goes against God's character and nature. But you can't rejoice at a false narrative being promoted through media or something like this. You rejoice in the truth, and you cannot rejoice in wrongdoing. But in progressive Christianity, again, they've adopted cultural's definition of love, which is an acceptance and affirmation and even celebration of whatever anyone else wants to do, behave like, or believe. But as Christians, we can't accept that definition of love.
Very good. Yeah, that's great stuff. That's great stuff. So you can pick up Elisa Childers' book, Another Gospel, okay, and she goes through her story again of a bit of a crisis of faith, if you will, and then her road from, working through her doubts, almost becoming a progressive Christian. She had to wrestle with a lot of these things, and God kind of set her back on the straight and narrow with some of it. And so I believe she has another book out. You can check that out as well on her website. And anyways, well, I hope this was a little bit educational for you here today. And maybe you're a part of a church that's a little bit on this progressive end. I encourage you, if you are, just to think through it, pray through it, have some conversations with the church leaders or pastors, see where they stand on some of this. And you know what? I do hope and pray that you are part of a biblical church that is following the Word of God in all things. And that's all I have to share for today. So God bless you. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like if you want more content like this. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.